General Confectionery. The neon sign above the door proclaimed it in bright green. I found myself here more days than I didn't. The owner, a human named Robert, let me sleep in the booths if I took a shower and helped with the dishes. I was always willing to do the work. It helped keep the mind busy. The bell above the door tinkled softly as I stepped in, setting my backpack gently beside the door. The small pastry parlor and candy shop was always warm, the smell of butter and sugar filling the air. It took me back to my childhood as I sat down in my usual booth, using a napkin to daub the cut on my face from my earlier beating. Robert coasted over to me with a mug of dark coffee in each hand. I tilted my face away as he sat across from me, setting the warm mug in front of me. He gently took my chin in his hand and tilted it so he could see the cut. Sighing softly, a small flap on his prosthetic hand opened and sprayed the cut with a liquid bandage. Rob sighed softly and asked, "Did you get beat up by the Gretchen boys again?" I nodded softly. I didn't feel like speaking tonight. They'd taken the small amount of credits I'd acquired over the last month. Some sort of bogus property tax. I could cry if I was physically capable. Robert patted me on the back, softly saying, "I'll get you something to eat. Just rest for the night, Clip. I'll take care of the chores." He disappeared into the kitchen again and returned shortly with a few jam tarts, my favorite thing he made. Setting them in front of me and disappearing back into the kitchen, he let me enjoy the peace and quiet I rarely got while I ate. I hardly lifted my head when the door tinkled open. Before a large, clawed hand slammed my face into the counter, smashing my tarts against my face and spilling my coffee. One of the Gretchens laughed softly in my ear as he hissed. "So this is where the runt of the litter goes to lick his wounds. Guess you're gonna need a new hole in the wall, runt." Brady Gretchen slid me out of the booth and threw me on the floor. I watched his heavy boot rear back. He was going to kick my face in. I closed my eyes, just registering the sound of the kitchen door flying open. There was a splut noise and the Gretchen screamed, the acrid smell of burning scales following him as he fell on the ground and scrambled out of the door. I opened my eyes and looked around. Rob just stood outside the kitchen doors, a pot filled with molten sugar in one hand, his cybernetic prosthetic's palm and fingers covered in the yellowish clear goo. He looked livid, one of his legs bouncing up and down with adrenaline as he stood there. Then, taking a deep breath, he set the pot of molten sugar down and stepped over, kneeling over me as he asked, "You okay, Clip? He didn't hurt you too bad, did he?" I shook my head, finding my voice through the shock to say, "No, he just interrupted my meal." I felt subsentient as Rob helped me up and dusted the crumbs off of me. I lay down in the booth and closed my eyes. Rob let me rest, turning off the light and flipping the sign to closed. The next morning I was woken up by the door being slammed open. I watched through bleary eyes as Brady Gretchen, a large pink burn mark splattered across his face scales, walked in. Another 4 iguana-like Gretchens close behind. They all walked up to the counter, where Rob had his pastries displayed for discount. As Rob walked out of the kitchen, he stopped, surprised by the 5 Gretchens. As one, they turned, and from their jackets drew blocky firearms, aiming them at Robert's chest. "Under Gretchen brood law, any who interfere with the culling of the gene pool are guilty of attempted genocide, human." They had barely finished speaking when they opened fire, the rounds plowing into Robert's chest as I ducked and screamed. My malformed claws wouldn't even be a match for an unarmed Gretchen. The cacophony of gunfire stopped, my ears ringing in the silence. Then I was dragged from beneath a table by Brady Gretchen, before being slammed onto it. He grinned like a monster as he stuck the firearm in my face, so I stared down the barrel. "Ready to die, runt?" I could see his finger begin to squeeze the trigger. "Ugh, you guys are fucking terrible shots." It was like hearing a demon speak as the Gretchens turned their guns once again on the human, who was brushing the lead projectiles from his chest. His shirt was ripped open, revealing metal painted to look like flesh, scuff marks showing bright silver. He spoke again, sounding mildly frustrated. "You can survive the glassing of Earth, 20 system-wide wars, and 30 major conflicts, have almost your entire body replaced with cybernetics after you get ripped to shit by an IED, and some young punk who thinks he's hot shit will still try to gun you down in your own candy shop. For fuck's sake, I'm 200 years old and it seems that every fucking year—" One of the Gretchens had fired, Rob's head whipping backwards, green hair flying off in a puff of fibrous strands. Rob's head flopped back into its normal position, a scuffed shine of silver carving through his hairline. Raising his hand with a sigh, he made a finger pistol with his right hand and pointed it at the Gretchen who had fired. The tip of the digit hinged open as Rob said, "Bang." There was a sound like an electric arc, and the opening of his finger flashed. The Gretchen keeling backwards as blue blood splattered on the face of the one behind him, making them flinch. Rob just looked tired as he softly sighed. The Gretchens were frozen in fear, their mortality suddenly apparent. I let you off easy with the molten sugar, Brady Gretchen. Oh yeah, I know who you are. I also know I just shot Grady Gretchen. You're all going to end up in the morgue if you keep this fucking gangbanger shit up. Go bury your brother, and never come back here again. If you don't leave, they'll send what's left of you home in a soup can. His voice was as sweet as poisoned honey. The Gretchens quickly lifted a limb each of their dead brother and hauled him quickly from the shop. Rob sat down across from me. As though it were magic, he waved his hand and the metal open sign flipped to stay closed. I recognized his face now. How could I not, if his hair had been cut shorter and dyed solid black instead of streaked with green? His face stared at you from every war memorial with that same exhausted look. You're General Robert Nichols. I thought you were a myth. I stood and snapped a salute. Sir, my grandfather served at your side during the Second Torvan Carpathian War. He waved his hands softly, his positive energy waning, a black cloud seeming to settle over him. Just call me Rob. General Numbskull Nicholas is dead. Your grandfather was a good man, Clip, but I prefer not to remember my years on the battlefield. I awkwardly dropped the salute, feeling like I'd opened Pandora's box. I sat across from him and stayed silent as the human softly popped a panel on their arm open, revealing a small screen and a keypad beside 6 green vials of liquid. He tapped a few numbers before pressing a button, and one of the vials drained away, the empty vial being ejected into his palm as he relaxed into the booth. Maybe one day I'll tell you my story, Clip. Maybe I won't. But I will say this. He grabbed my arm and looked into my eyes. I saw it all in those amber eyes. Pain so deep and scarring it must bleed him of happiness every day. Avoid violence at all costs. He let go of my arm, his forearms popping open to reveal circuitry and hydraulics. You might just find out that you're good at it. And you might find out you like it. He closed his arms and retreated into the kitchen, leaving a deafening silence in his wake. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. Everything I used is in the description below. If there's a story you'd like to hear narrated, let me know and I'll reach out to the author and see if we can make that happen. Thanks again. It's a scary world out there. But remember, to be brave and look up, to seek the stars.